the whole house of cards could come down if leaders don't wake up and say, this AI is wonderful, but we have to have useful employment for our people. And in order to do that, they're going to have to start connecting and start looking at the individuals that work for them and beyond this task. Because I do think leaders have these blinders on. The things that are causing AI to break down and AI to fail are the human aspects of things. And it's not that, oh, well, let's just get rid of them and that solves our problem. It doesn't, because there's so many unintended consequences of that. You have to solve for the humans. And when you solve for the humans, then the AI it's so much easier for adoption.
Welcome to Leadership Disrupted. Today we have with us Karen Zeigler. She is the CEO of the Human Score, a revolutionary standard for measuring how human-centered an organization truly is. Their mission is to elevate performance by unlocking the full potential of people through purpose-driven leadership, intentional design, and a deep belief in what makes us most human. At the intersection of business strategy and human potential, Karen has built a career turning complexity into clarity. Whether in a boardroom or on a mountain trail, she brings the same mindset, design thinking with a soul. I love that phrase. The Human Score helps companies realign structure, culture, decision-making, work design, and fairness, because the future of work is not artificial intelligence, it's human insight. And while AI represents a powerful innovation, Karen advocates for purpose-driven leadership that is intentional about unlocking the unique human potential of each individual with whom you work. And so, first of all, Karen, welcome. It is great to have you. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Yes, thank
And
you, Dan.
I imagine, given all the things that we've talked about before this podcast, is there anything you'd like to introduce yourself to the audience? Any gaps you'd like to fill, or anything you'd like to share about yourself before we kind of deep dive into the topic related to the Human Score?
Yeah, no, just invite anyone that is interested to follow the Human Score and myself on LinkedIn. That's where the primary content comes out, where we talk about human-centered leadership and all the aspects of the human experience inside the organization and how they actually impact the organization and their performance and the bottom line.
So I'll make sure that in the show notes for this, whether someone is watching or listening on Apple Podcasts or YouTube or Spotify, if you go to the episode notes, you will see the details, including links for how to get to Karen and to the Human Score. We'll make sure that that's very convenient. And also, while I'm giving some administrative information, we'd love for you to click the subscribe button and subscribe, follow, like the episode, all of the things, including commentary. If you have comments or questions, you can add commentary to the podcast, depending upon which platform you're using to absorb it or to receive it. So, Karen, you and I are both of an age where we can remember back to the 80s and 90s at least. And human-centered leadership is a phrase that's been used for a long time. And you can go back to Jim Collins' Good to Great even, and there were definite references for how important it is to get the right people on the bus, and how important it was to treat your people well. But it seems to me something has shifted, let's say in the last 10 years. I don't know the exact time of the shift, and it's been more kind of a subtle, like a slow moving shift. How do you perceive it? Do you see the workplace today, the leadership landscape today, being more challenging than it was 10 years ago, 20, 30 years ago? Or is it's similar, but we just have new solutions?
I would say it is actually very much so more challenging for a number of reasons. One is the evolution that's gone on in humanity, and we can dig deeper into that. But also technology. I mean, everything is about going faster, doing more. And so that those two combined, plus I'm sure there are many others, puts a tremendous amount of pressure on a leader. And the way traditional leadership has always operated, um, they really have to go through that alone. They're not, in many instances, carrying that burden with their team or you know working through those issues with their team. They're trying to solve those problems on their own or maybe with their superiors, but not a lot of co-creation going on um, in companies today, and that adds another burden, and it also increases the tension of the us versus them.
Well, and I feel lucky that my leadership journey started at a point where like my first literal job of leading a team, it was a very small team. We had well-defined objectives. It was four guys, me and four guys. And I was selected just because I was the subject matter expert. And so I'm leading four guys, and you slowly evolve as a leader. And then over the years and the decades, the teams expanded, the job expanded. But I can look back and I can kind of see this linear progression. But I talk to young folks today, and I use the term, I say young folks, and I feel like the old man on the porch,
I
waving
can
my cane.
relate.
But when I say young folks, I'm talking about leaders in their 20s and 30s.
Yeah.
Man, they're just thrown into the fire. It is okay. Hey, first leadership job. Here are your 18 direct reports or your 7 direct reports. And by the way,
Hmm.
it's 7 direct reports, and you are still expected to individually contribute. And you're
Hmm.
expected to do this and this and this. Except, by the way, this system is broken, and this other system, we're replacing it. And also, we want you to master AI, and we want your team to master AI. And
Yeah.
and it
And
it
yeah.
is, and so not surprisingly, you have younger generations of workers just saying, "I don't think I want to lead. I don't. You suck the life and joy out of leadership. So
Hmm.
maybe I'll just individually contribute if that's okay with you." Are you seeing something similar?
Well, yes, that I mean that's tremendous pressure, and I think to speak to the humanity of things evolving, we've inside corporations, we're traditionally just human doings.
Yeah.
You're just a human doing. And I think that especially the younger ones have seen their parents like you and I being human doings and then being discarded for age or whatever other reason because we've somehow gotten paid too much because we've been there too long, that kind of thing. So they're watching our generation and how we were treated in the organization and how we were human doings and never human beings, not even when we came home,
Mhm.
oftentimes. And they're going, that's not the life I want to repeat. I'm going to learn from my parents and I'm going to say no. And so, I think it's swinging the other way, but it doesn't have to. There is a path to leadership where you can be a human being. And I
Yeah.
think as much as there's controversy over AI, I think there are so many opportunities with AI for us to be human beings and let AI be the human doing or the doy or whatever the word is, the
Yeah.
robot that does the things. So,
I think the trap we sort of fell into as a I guess a workplace as a whole is when you look at your humans as human doings, like they're just doing things, then
mhm,
you can see, well, AI can do these things and it can do them faster, maybe with better quality, maybe with lesser quality, but if in the end it can do these things, well, then we'll just leverage AI. Maybe we can, scale down from 500 to 300 humans. Um,
yeah,
whereas if your humans are thinking beings who are thinking and providing insight and
yeah,
energy and direction, that AI can't replace, at least right now.
yeah,
It's hard for it to replace. Um,
yeah.
and I think leaders, particularly at the upper echelons, if they if they're used to seeing the masses of employees and not really engaging at an individual level with employees, it's easy to look at that and say, out of these 8,000 jobs, I should be able to lop off 2,000 of them and still have the remaining five be more, that's bad math, the remaining 6,000 of them
Mhm.
be more productive than the original 8,000.
Yeah.
But I mean, how are you seeing AI impact the culture in the workplace today?
Well, first I want to say about culture. If you recall the CEO that was caught at the Coldplay concert, right?
Yes,
Is it
yes,
okay? Uh, I think, AI is bringing that kind of karma back to us because obviously, if you look at that example, long before he was caught on camera kissing the HR lady or whoever it was, there was problems going on, right, in his
yeah,
marriage. There were things that that were unaddressed, not only in the workplace with him, but also in his relationship with his wife. And so what you avoid eventually comes back to you because it's not going to go away until you face it. And
mhm,
that's what AI is bringing forth with leaders because they have avoided the relationship with their employees in many cases. They've avoided the problems the employees have. If you look at the problems that is occurring and what's causing AI initiatives to fail, data problems, workflow design, and just organizational structure and decision making, AI can't do it. Like the way your stuff is messed up, I can't do it, is what AI is
right,
saying to the world. But employees have been saying that to their leaders for decades, right? And employees have been adapting, have been resilient to the point of mental health crises, well-being issues. So it's almost as if it's the karma, right? You didn't do this for your people. Now you're going to invest millions of dollars in AI and thinking you're going to do it, but you still have to address the underlying issues. You can't avoid those. And so, in so many ways, AI is a mirror to the things that leaders need to address. And even the ones that have been successful in what they've done with AI, it's still shown a light on the things that aren't working, and those involve people. And I think it's ironic how many employees are being brought back because AI wasn't the wonderful thing that it could be. And I think that's also because they put the focus on the wrong place. Like
yeah,
I forget which, if it was Klarna or maybe Duolingo, they put it all on the results piece of things. But the results have to be serviced by what's going on in the organization. And if that's already broken, you can jack up the results all you want, but you won't be able to deliver it with broken systems. So you're upsetting your customers as well. I have two golden retrievers, and so whenever I need a little bit of joy, I go out to Instagram and I watch golden retriever videos. And the other day I was watching one. It was talking about, and maybe you've seen it. There's the dad math and there's the mom math. Well, this one was about the golden retriever math,
I have not seen
and
it.
but anyway, there is a leadership math also. And I
Uh-huh,
think that is what's important for leaders to know. And the leadership math is the leader experience, LX, is equal to EX plus CX. So whatever the customer experience is, whatever the employee experience is, the LX is
mhm,
the magnification of both of those, right? But what people don't realize, it's not an LX, CX, EX, it's an HX, a human experience.
mhm,
Every single one, customer, employee, leader, wants to be seen, wants to be heard, wants to be valued for what they bring to the world. And until we recognize that about one another, the math's going to be messed up. The answers are not going to come forth. And, that's why I'm passionate about what I do at the Human Score. I'm passionate about human-centered leadership, but yeah, I've probably
How do
gone
we
over that answer, but
No, no, this is great. How do we lose that? I mean, it like, to hear you describe it this way, it just seems so fundamental. It seems like, how could you not, um, be paying attention to the people who are doing the doing, Um,
Yeah.
but it just, I look at our world of work and how we hire people and we bring people in and we create these teams of humans who might not ever choose these coworkers as friends.
Hmm.
You assign 5, 10 people to work together. So maybe it's not a surprise that there's some disconnect or some abrasion occasionally, but it
Hmm.
seems like more than that. It seems like leaders have just lost sight of the human element, broadly speaking. Like you said, the
Yeah.
AI is just highlighting the gap. But
Yeah.
how did that happen? Yeah, I mean, I'm not expecting you to answer for all of humanity, but
Yeah.
do you have a point of view on how over
Sure.
time we just lost that
Yeah.
connection?
Yes, I do have a point of view. I would say it's subconscious programming from birth to all of our education to all obviously all of our work. We've been programmed that this is how you make yourself valuable, and it is doing, 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 meeting goals, blah blah blah. We're not taught human being and human concern for one another outside of a lot of religious organizations teach that, but we're taught you got to do it for yourself. You got to get out
Mhm.
there and go after it, held to everyone else for you to get your prize. And so, uh, in many ways, we're just going through life on old subconscious programming that has, made us put the only human at the center. The only human that exists is me, right?
Yeah.
Um, Not recognizing which, I'm old school, so I love Zig Ziglar, and he was an amazing leader when it came to talking about how what we do as humans affects everyone else. And one of my favorite quotes is, "You can have everything you want in life as long as you help enough other people get what they want in
Mhm.
life," and it's so true. Um, that it's that good karma instead of the bad karma I just talked about. But that's not the usual teaching.
Well, and in order to help those people get what they want out of life, you have to know them and ask them. You have to have those conversations. And most leaders today, at least when I look at the conversations they're having as part of their either their one-on-one weekly meeting with their employee or their quarterly, performance review or update or their annual performance review, it's all about it's back to your original point. What have you done? How are you tracking with what you were supposed to do? But
Yeah.
almost never is there significant time. There might be a little bit of like nicey chit chat up front, but no significant time asking questions like, what do you want out of this? What's
Mhm.
your career path? What are your goals? What's happening with the rest of your life? Who are you? What are you?
Yeah.
What's important to you? And then someone advised me a while back to start asking this question: how am I showing up for you as a leader? How am I doing
Mm.
for you as a leader? And at first, it took me a while to internalize that about, well, how do I make that a natural part of the conversation? But then what I found was initially the employees that report to me were a little nervous and scared to answer that question. They'd not been asked a question like that before, and so initially I would ask, so let's rate me. Give me a scorecard. How am I showing up for you and your goals? And initially it was all very very nice and polite, and it took a while for people to become comfortable saying, well, if I were to give you some feedback, here's what you could do that would help me. Here's how you could adjust that would help me. And one of the surprises, and I'll just share this one. A young lady said, "Look, I think I'm a young mother. I have 2 kids at home, and so when you schedule anything outside of our normal business hours, you may only think that's like a 5:30 meeting versus a 5 o'clock meeting. But for me, it's a big deal. I have to leave at a specific time because
Yeah.
I have someone at home who's watching the kids, and she is done at a certain time.
Hmm.
Also, when you have evening um, activities, I understand the spirit of it is you want to bring people together, you want everyone to bond, and that's all great. But I always feel like I miss out because I can never attend those things.
Yeah.
And without derailing this conversation, that moment was so huge for our working relationship, where as I managed to still, over time, we managed to solve some issues where we could include her. We could accommodate her
Hmm.
particular situation. And it wasn't just her, it was, other people who had situations and circumstances. But if I was so focused on the doing that I forgot the humans that were in front of me.
Yeah.
And um, but I think that's more unusual than usual in today's world. Is that when you talk about the human score,
Hmm.
tell us about that. Does that, well, I guess, does the human score assess or self-assess those kinds of things? Or I don't want to put words in your mouth. I'd love to know
Yeah.
more about what the human score is and what the
Sure.
tool does.
Yeah, the human score is a diagnostic tool and it is given to the employees. There are five categories, which I think you may have mentioned previously, but they're work design, structure, culture, decision making, and fairness. And so the employees are asked a series of questions. There's each category has 8 subscales, like work design has impact, value, all sorts of things. So there's
Mhm,
there's 40 categories in all that we're getting feedback from the employees as to their experience with the organization and how it adversely affects them, limits them, is problematic, all the way to is actually a very good experience. And so it gives the C-suite leaders the opportunity to learn about how their employees are experiencing the organization and how that experience is impacting, how work flows, how profits get made, risks that are involved. So every C-suite, instead of looking at the organization through their silos lenses, if you
mhm.
will, they're looking at it through humanity. So CFOs can look to see what of the human experience is actually impacting the bottom line negatively. The CMO can look at how does the human experience look different than maybe the brand that we're promising.
Mhm.
So every C-suite can now look through the same lens, but with their expertise on to make a difference in the organization. And it's also I find as a lover of change management that it is an excellent tool for change management because it tracks these things. So, for instance, if you find which I can't imagine there'd be an organization right now who's trying to implement AI that wouldn't find work design fairly low on the
Uh-huh.
category. So say they know it's low, and so that's their focus for change for the next quarter, right? And so they can go back quarter later to see if the initiatives that we encourage them to make co-creating initiatives instead of top-down initiatives, if those initiatives impacted what they were trying to accomplish, work design improving. But they can also see were there unintended consequences. Did something go down as a result of that change? So it's a monitoring system for continuous improvement and change management, and a tool for helping them co-create that with their employees when they're open to that.
Are the employee responses confidential?
Yes, they are.
So then it's very much like a 360 feedback, only instead of giving feedback on your direct report supervisor, you're giving feedback more broadly, like on your organization and
Yeah.
your organization's way of working.
Yes, your
And
job and how it relates to the
yeah,
organization. Yeah,
that's fantastic. So
yeah.
what's what's the most common surprise that C-suite executives experience when they're looking at the results?
Um, that it's having that great of impact. They knew, like with AI, they knew the systems weren't that great, weren't flowing that well, but the humans still seem to be dealing with it. So okay. Um, that they recognize now
Uh-huh.
that impact is unsustainable. I think it's a real wake up call for most executives to see what the experience is causing within their organization.
I was speaking with a senior video developer who works for a digital marketing agency, and he was telling me that he'd received essentially an order from his vice president that they were going to begin using AI tools for their video development, and that the AI tools should improve productivity by at least 30%. And it was an edict. It's you are going to start using these tools. You are going to learn.
Mm,
And the VP said, I expect to be seeing um, now as we're reviewing outputs. I want to know how much AI was used in developing particular videos and other video based products. And this guy that was talking to me was under so much pressure
mm,
to produce videos that would resonate with clients they would
mhm.
use for their marketing purposes. He started, but he found he was struggling to get the quality of output that they needed in some cases. And he said, so I just ended up faking the metrics. I I used AI on a couple of things, but I was mostly still doing it myself, still doing it the old way. But because that had been forbidden, and I
Yeah,
was being asked to report, like, how much of this video is AI generated? So I would say 40%, when in fact it was 10% or less. And then
yeah,
as the months progressed, he said my reported numbers had to increase because I was being told they had to increase, and yet I was still struggling to get the tools to do what my boss thinks that they would do. And he said, I'm and he said, I'm getting better at leveraging the tools, but I don't think, and this was the comment that really struck me. He said, I don't think these tools do what he thinks they do. And
mhm.
yet I'm not necessarily comfortable because he's been sold. He is sold. And I think it's because his boss has been sold and his bosses have been sold. And
Yeah.
you have to wonder about that office dynamic where the the king says what's the king says it will be so, and so everyone kind of lines up to at least pretend to make it so.
Yeah. And I think that goes back to that tension and that widening gap that you talked about. Um, I would imagine at some point this leader may say, "It ain't so, and I'm out of here
Yeah,
because it's not working." There is a disconnect between um, expectations and reality, and that's adding to the mental frustration, the mental angst, causing him to even be dishonest,
yeah,
which that in and of itself weighs on a person to till at some point he will break and say, I can't do this, I can't do this anymore. Um, because it's not the job, you know, he could absolutely enjoy learning AI, learning to put it to work where he can. Um, but it's all that other forced
yeah.
stuff that it wears on the inside of a person.
I know that we have employees who feel paranoid about, what is AI going to do to the job landscape? What is it? And I know there are plenty of like digital marketing and digital design positions that have been eliminated,
Hmm.
replaced by AI, either rightly or wrongly so. But it does create a certain paranoia. Let's assume for a moment, rightly so, that hey, we've done everything right in terms of leveraging AI, and it turns out that because of the increased efficiencies, we don't need quite as many people doing these things, so some jobs are eliminated. I don't know that organizations spend much time thinking about the cultural impact on the survivors. I mean, both the survivors and those who didn't survive, but the people who are
Hmm.
left behind doing the work. Um, I think that's got to have an impact on how
Yeah.
they feel about their organization, how they feel about their boss, how the psychological safety that they're experiencing. Um,
Yeah.
what have you experienced?
Well, I was kind of having a flashback myself to a time when I was the VP at Bank of America. My mentor, she was a few decades ahead of me, and I loved her to death. But we were having a merger, which we had gone through like every couple of years for 10 years. And she was at that over 50 and making too much money by the
Mhm.
merger standards. So they let her go. And it was at that moment when they let her go, and she was killing it, what she was doing. She had moved into investments out of leadership and into investments, and she was just slaying the market as far as bringing in clients. But they let her go. And it was at that moment that I said, that will never happen to me. I will
Yeah.
not be here 30 years and have them can me because I hit 50 and I was making too much money. And I think that is the inner determination that's happening in employees when they see other employees leaving or being fired because their job's being replaced by AI or whatever. They're going to go, that's not happening to me. I'm going to make a second lane, a gig, side hustle, whatever, that they won't own me.
Yeah.
And I think that's the challenge that leaders face. If you can't make them do anything, then how do you lead? That's what the leadership has been based on in the past. And so that's not how the leadership will win going forward.
And it's easy. AI is one thing that's making it easier to move on, as employees do master the AI tools. But even beyond AI, you have LinkedIn, you have Glassdoor, you have all kinds of resources as an employee. And if you're a screen worker, basically somebody who sits at a computer screen, either at home or in the office, there are so many things at your fingertips when you get ticked off or disappointed or a little paranoid or just
Hmm.
uncertain.
Yeah.
Hey, I
Yeah.
I don't know for sure. Well, let me take a look at LinkedIn. Oh, I'll click on that jobs button. LinkedIn is happy to serve up to you jobs that it says, "Oh, you'd be a great fit here." And I whether that's real or not, or right or not, or true or not,
Hmm.
it suddenly shows you some grass on the other side of the fence, and then you
Yeah.
start to think, maybe I should think about moving on. And once people start that path, it's not
Hmm.
true all the time, but oftentimes they're done. Like, it may be a
Yeah.
slow walkout, it may be maybe a fast walkout in a few weeks
Yeah.
or a few months or a few years, but the walkout started because I feel like I work for a person, a team, a department, or organization that doesn't see me, that doesn't understand my contribution, and that's probably the core issue under what you just described. If the organization doesn't actually see the value you're creating at 50, if they do
Hmm.
see it, I think you don't have the effect that you're describing, because people in their 50s have these lifetimes of experience and
Yeah.
do end up creating deep value. I have someone that I know well. She's in that age category and she's in sales, and she reached a point where she was doing better than she had ever done before. She felt like she was hitting on all pistons, and the company looked at her commissions and just decided that's too much for someone in your role. And they simply changed her commission structure. And not surprisingly, within 4 months, she had moved on.
Yeah.
And they changed her commission structure because what they knew about her was a number. But they did not know what was driving that number, what was connected to that number. And it was such a mistake, because um,
Yeah.
they ended up losing many of those accounts, the accounts that
Oh, yeah.
stayed. It just
The mentor I mentioned, she went to another private investment firm. She took all her customers with her, and I was sitting back at Bank of America at the time laughing that they were going bye-bye. I'm like,
Yeah.
"You deserved that." That was, the consequences you deserve for laying off a stellar leader like that,
So
because of money. And
I
so
think I'm sorry, go ahead.
that
Didn't mean
I
to
was just
interrupt.
saying that greed is what I would call it. Um,
Yeah, the
is the
the
lens that leaders are often looking through, and I think that is what is causing the revolt of employees that has happened, that they no longer will work for someone that cares more about the dollar than they care about the person in front of them.
And I think there is a convergence of trends, convergence of forces that are causing leaders to be more doing-ish versus human-ish. Um,
Mhm.
Everything from, you mentioned, hey, the faster pace of work, the greater pressure to achieve financial outcomes, but beyond that, the pace and speed of information. I think
Mhm.
leaders tend to be information overwhelmed, misinformation overwhelmed.
Yeah.
You look at um, social media has us on all the time.
Mhm.
I think they're sleep deprived without even necessarily realizing they're sleep deprived. They're medicated. Their food, like what they're taking in, is not
Mhm.
as nutritious as it probably was 10 or 20 years ago. So you have people who are, without even realizing it, they're overwhelmed and in a state of agitation. It makes
Yeah.
it harder to even want to have those human connections. All you want to do is show up, get the work done, and then get out and go relax or de-stress or something.
Mhm.
Um, and I know that's not true of every leader. It's not true of every situation, but I think
Yeah.
broadly speaking, we're being dehumanized by social media. We're being dehumanized by news and fake news, information and misinformation, and more and more and more and more. And without taking any kind of political bent on it, I will say our larger leaders outside of our businesses,
Mhm.
they are not, they're just not providing great examples either. So
No.
it,
Mm-mm.
I'm so grateful that I'm not a young person where my formative years are these years. At
Mhm.
least in my formative years, I had, whether it was, I don't know if it was real or an illusion, but it felt like the system worked. It felt like, hey, you know what? You do the right things, you get an education, you go to work, you work hard, you make enough money to pay your bills and to afford a home and a car and a small family. And like if you do your part, the system will do its part,
Yeah.
and things it will be okay. I know so many who are doing their part and the system is not doing its part. They
Yeah.
cannot afford the basics in terms of a small family and a mortgage and just
Oh,
the
sure.
what we used to consider to be just the regular niceties of
Yeah.
life. So they can be forgiven for being a little edgy, a
Yeah.
little resistant sometimes. Um, if these trends continue, what forces it to stop?
Well, they're already crumbling, a lot of the systems, both inside companies and in governments. Um, if they I've written about this on LinkedIn called From Hopeless to Human. If you follow the thread forward of AI taking over jobs, even if it landed on the low end of 30% being unemployed for AI, you lived through 2008. 2008 was a 10% unemployment
Yeah,
peak. And at that, I think we lost 465 banks. I don't even know the number of that were bailed out by the government, but that's not doable at 30%. The government will
yeah,
not have the funds to bail out the banks. And if you got 30% of the population unable to buy goods and services, what is that going to do to businesses? If the banks are under so much pressure in that instance, how are they going to have credit to sustain their business? The whole house of cards could come down if leaders don't wake up and say, this AI is wonderful, but we have to have useful employment for our people. And in order to do that, they're going to have to start connecting and start looking at the individuals that work for them and beyond this task. Because I do think leaders have these blinders on, like, Karen, you are our salesperson or whatever it is, and you do sales things, and that's all you're good for. And now that AI is doing that, well, I don't need you anymore. That's not true. Every person in the organization has a value, you have to look for it. This is one of the things we are kicking off a workplace renaissance. I think AI is the new renaissance in the workplace, and boy, does it need to be enlivened with creativity and innovation. Because if you look at my personality type, which most businesses look at personality type,
Mhm.
especially with their leaders, I'm a strategic person. I'm a strategic thinker just naturally. People talk about, I got to upskill my employees, and that's a cost that I can't afford. That's not true. I'm strategic. Just give me
Yeah.
the opportunity to be strategic, and we can learn and grow and become even better at being strategy. Every employee has those hidden gifts and talents within them that their job descriptions don't even hardly scratch. And I think this is what we teach in Workplace Renaissance, to begin to identify those things, identify how they can be used in this AI implementation, cleaning up the data, redesigning workflows, all
Mhm.
those things. And from there, it evolves into what's next. Because, right, change is always happening. AI is just the latest. But when we can learn to tap into the gifts and talents of our employees for the change and co-create it together, yeah, the old job descriptions are going to go away, but you're going to see the gold. I don't know who it was that originally coined the phrase, the acres of diamonds. They're all there. People just have not looked at them and looked for them.
I think what I love about what you said is, if you start with a clear, the phrase I use is story problem, like a clear articulation of what you're looking to solve for. And if what you're looking to solve for is, hey, I need a deeper connection with my direct reports, and I know that comes from time, but I feel like I don't have time. Stop yourself at that moment from just dismissing it, because like you said, articulate the problem, articulate the challenge, and then give your mind and others around you some time. You and I talk about design thinking. Apply
Yeah.
perhaps design thinking to this problem that seems insurmountable, because you think, well, I need to spend more time with each of them. I don't have time to spend with any of them. Don't talk yourself out of it so quickly. Just
Yeah.
sit with the problem, and the issue itself is important enough where I do think our minds will eventually find ways to solve some of these things that seem unsolvable. Um,
Yeah.
I'm amazed at how often companies who are experiencing financial challenges don't tap into the wisdom of the crowd, so to speak. They
Yeah.
actually they're afraid. We don't want to let employees know how challenging it is. So instead,
Yeah.
we lead. We hey, happy, happy, happy. No weeds in our garden. Everything is fine. Meanwhile, underneath, they're trying to
Yeah.
solve it. When in fact, if they would find a way to be comfortable transparently saying, hey, folks, here is our challenge. Here's our
Yeah.
competitive landscape that's evolving because of AI. Here's what we're trying to figure out. And we're open. We're open to thoughts and ideas. Now, it may be that 70% or 80% of the ideas that come back at you won't be workable or doable, but the answers are there.
Yeah, the answers. And the one thing that I teach when I teach design thinking principles for leadership is the problems are not separate from the vision or the goal, right? The problems are, it's the old obstacle is the way situation.
Yeah.
Um, because every team that I would sit down with, I would say, here's our goals. And I want to know, how, what are we doing well, what are we missing, what are we not doing well, and whatever problems came up in multiple places,
Mhm.
then that's one we would tackle first. And what happens is when you bring them together to co-create the solutions to those problems, and this doesn't have to cost budgets. When I was a frontline manager at Bank of America, I had no budget. The systems were what the systems were. I just had my teams and our own resourcefulness, and that is, quite frankly, the most fertile creative ground that you can have, is when there's constraints on your creativity. So yeah, we would always figure out what are the problems that are keeping you from reaching these goals, and how can we remove them. And they always had a blast working together to remove them, coming up with new ideas. And but if you worked in a fearful type environment. I remember precisely one time one of my customer service reps says, "But what if my ideas don't work? What's going to happen to me?" Because it was merger mania when I was a
Mhm.
banking center manager. And I said, "Well, if your ideas don't work, if they don't help you reach the goals, then at some point we may have to have a conversation about, is this the job for you? But that's way down the line. Let's just get excited about the ideas and testing and
Yeah.
iterating. That's all part of design thinking. Because yeah, sometimes job is not a fit. But if we're having those engaging conversations, trying different things and experimenting, they're going to understand 6 months from now when the job is just not a good fit.
Yeah.
They're going to understand. And because of the relationship I had built with them, obviously I would try to find other avenues for them to stay within the company. But um, it's a whole different scenario when you start with that empathy of what's keeping you from that goal that we have, and how can I remove those obstacles? The
And it
obstacle
doesn't,
is the way.
maybe this is just the engineer in me, but it doesn't actually count as an experiment if you know how it's going to work out. It's an experiment, so you're going to give it your best shot. You're going to try new ideas, new things, and you're going
Yeah,
to learn from that experience. And it may work
sure.
out exactly the way you intend, it or very different than what you intend.
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons I love the idea of the human score assessment is it well partly because I'm an engineer, so I love the idea of metrics, but I like the anonymity. I wish every organization on the planet would complete a human score assessment, giving anonymized feedback, and to some degree they do with employee engagement surveys or annual
Yeah.
employee surveys, but you've got a more like a fine-tuned approach. You're looking for something very specific,
Yeah.
and
Causality. Yeah, the
yeah,
root cause of things.
and so I think there's a usefulness there, but the cynic in me suspects that if we were to apply, let's say everyone on the planet for their workplace did a human score assessment and every leader received the results, I have a feeling that a large majority of those leaders would either look at it and not believe it or not understand it, or in some other way dismiss it as fake news or this isn't real, this isn't right. And if we did if we did a human score assessment for an entire country,
Mhm.
our political leaders would look at it, and I mean our political leaders broadly speaking on all sides of the
Yeah.
aisle. I don't
Yeah.
I am I hopeless? I hate to say it. I'm close to hopeless. I think they would look at the human score assessment of the country and say, "Oh, no, 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 no. That's not what this says. What this
Mm,
says is virtually the opposite of what it actually says." When you have
yeah.
I just read two different pieces of information recently. I'm not going to call either of them news. I read that the average Thanksgiving dinner for the average family is going to cost nearly $1,000 this year.
Mm,
I also read that, well, the cost of the Walmart Thanksgiving basket of products has gone down from it's like $40 last year, and the cost has gone down to like $25. Now, that was truly fake news because it's not an apples to apples basket. But
right.
there's this attempt to say, those of you who are telling us costs are up, affordability is down, that's not real. That's no, no, no. It's actually much better than it is. And I think leaders in business need to, I'm hoping they can become more comfortable addressing the brutal realities in a real way. Because your
Yeah.
employees know, they don't believe the BS. They know they may not confront you with
Right.
the BS of what you're saying, but um, so do I have a okay, I have a question. I wonder the leadership teams who work with you and say, "Hey, we want to implement the um, we want to implement this assessment." Maybe they're already like self-selected. They've already decided they want to know what this is. So to some degree, they're by their nature they're more open to this
Mhm.
information, as
Sure.
opposed to someone who's just delivered the information and it's not what they want to hear, so they tend to ignore it. What are the actions that leadership teams typically take after they read the human score, the assessment, the results?
Yeah.
They maybe they're surprised, maybe they're not. But what kind of guidance or leadership development do you generally recommend or implement for them as a result
Sure.
of their human score?
Yeah, well, first let me give you a glimmer of hope because I heard you say a couple of times you were pretty hopeless about this.
I'm gonna own it, and I don't feel good about it. I don't. So I
Yeah,
appreciate talking to someone who's a little more optimistic.
yeah. Well, I learned this just actually since becoming CEO of the Human Score that less than 10% of organizations are human-centered. I think it's around 9 something. But thank you, ChatGPT, for telling
Mm.
me that the tipping point for new ideas to take uh, mass adoption is 10 to 25%. So we're on the cusp of human-centered leadership becoming a thing, right?
Uh-huh.
So that's good news. And obviously I'm here and you're here and this podcast is going out because that's what we want to promote, more human-centered leadership. So yeah, what happens with leaders once they take the human score is that they get an evaluation. You know, they get a score in each of those 5 categories, and with the basic dashboard comes a long list of recommendations that they can take and run with if they like. But we also have a consulting firm, which we hope not is just as disruptive, if not more disruptive, to the big 5 consulting as anything else that we do, and that is we are bringing together experts in those human-centered categories to collectively be a human score consulting
Mhm.
team. So they are solo consultants and independent doing their own niches, but we bring them together for projects. And so in looking at whatever area they want to um, improve their performance in and improve the human experience in their organization, then they from there we build the team of consultants for them to deliver those things. And that could be leadership training, that could be design thinking training, it could be a number of things. It's really the things that are causing AI to break down and AI to fail are the human aspects of things. And it's not that, oh, well, let's just get rid of them and that solves our problem. It doesn't, because there's so many unintended consequences of that. You have to solve for the humans. And when you solve for the humans, then the AI it's so much easier for adoption. And if you do it right, if you look for those gifts and talents, one thing I shared on Human Score, uh, Sarah Blakely, Spanx, Chobani, DoorDash, WhatsApp, all of those. I think there was about 7 of them. I made a post one day.
Mhm.
Every one of those 7 leaders, which their companies are worth millions and billions, were once frontline employees. And everyone thinks their frontline employees have no use besides the little job description they're
Mhm.
in, where in fact you may have the next WhatsApp, the next, DoorDash, the next whatever, right there in your company. But because you're looking at them as a salesperson or one of them was a dishwasher, you're not really tapping into the gold of the human that's before you.
I'm amazed the number of times organizations will decide we're going to become more customer centric. And then either the marketing team, it's usually the marketing team, is going to drive customer centricity, and they'll do research. They'll spend lots of money generating lots of reports, and no one actually says, well, who's interacting with our customers the most? Oh, it turns out it's the sales team. They're having conversations every day with our
Mm,
customers. Maybe we should tap in to that knowledge base. Maybe we should ask
yeah.
them, what is that experience like? What are those customers like? There seems to be this. Instead, let's go to ChatGPT and say, hey, ChatGPT, give me this typical customer persona. Here's what our product is. Here's what the
Yeah.
needs are. Input a lot of data. Give us the typical customer persona. When over here, you have Joe, who talks to customers every day and can give you stories, can give you his human instinct regarding what is most important, what annoys them, what sets them
Yeah.
off, what
Yeah.
all of those
All
things.
that.
But we don't. We find ourselves instead trusting the tech more so than
Yeah.
the humans, for sure.
Well, back to the leadership math, LX equals EX plus CX.
Mhm. That makes sense. And
Yeah.
I want to be respectful of your time. I know we're going to wrap up here shortly, but I do have one question. Like as you have these engagements and make these recommendations, is there um,
Bless you.
I will edit that out. I was trying to hold it back and it would not. So that will have to be edited out in post-production. Um, Assuming this conversation gets seen
Mhm.
by thousands of leaders, if you had one or two pieces of advice that you would like to leave with them, whether they reach out for the human score or not, whether they take any action or not, if you had any guidance for the leaders who are watching this, what comes to mind?
Mm. I would ask them to do the old management by walking around with their employees, whether that's walking around on Zoom or whatever, and ask them, what one little thing could I do to make your job easier today? And because when their job becomes easier, them achieving their goals becomes easier. And them achieving their goals is what makes your job easier as a leader, right? So I would say, how can you have compassion and empathy for the things that are inhibiting their performance? And in whatever
Yeah.
case you can, removing it. And
I-
and you'll be surprised. You may think, well, I can't ask that because they're going to tell me X, Y, and Z, and I can't do anything about X, Y, and Z. But it's not the case. Um, when I was in banking, I asked that question. They said, well, you could move the well, you don't even have copiers, I don't think anymore. But it was like you could remove the copier to the back behind the teller line because we have to go leave our drawer, leave the customer, go all the way around the building to the copier that's out front, where if we could just turn around and have a copier, we would take care of our
Mhm.
customers in half the time and they'd be out the door. So it could be something very, very simple. But unless you ask the question, you won't know what that simple action you can take for them will do.
With without a doubt, taking the time to step into their world just a bit and even recognizing how distant you are from their world and making that effort to walk in their shoes, asking them to help you understand their world, how you can create value for them.
Mm.
Um, I believe even if what is asked for or suggested, let's imagine it's truly undoable, it just can't happen.
Yeah.
Um, Even in that case, the act of asking sincerely
Yeah.
and the act of wanting to understand, asking, "Well, tell me more about why that's important. Tell me more
Yeah.
about what's driving that. Let's maybe understand the root causes, the root drivers." And
Yeah.
then being able to explain to the employee, "Here's what we can do. Here's what we perhaps can do eventually, and here's what perhaps we can never do." But having that kind of open dialogue and conversation, I
Yeah.
just think it doesn't happen nearly as much as it should in an ideal situation.
Yeah.
And you mentioned remotely, like management by walking around via Zoom
Mm.
or Teams or whatever. I am lucky in that I because I do have a day job and I have someone who I report to, and she is great. Once a week, we connect no matter what, whether there's a task to talk about, whether there's a project to review. We talk every week for half an hour, and I don't know if this is her plan or not, but it ends up being about 50-50.
Mm.
We about half the time is just spent on life in general, how things are
Yeah.
going, and the other half is spent on tasks, specific projects. And on those weeks where either because of my schedule or hers, our regular one-on-one has to go away, can't happen, she always circles back.
Yeah.
So that tells me that those meetings are on her radar. They're important to her. But I also know how much of an exception she is because I talk to
Yeah.
so many people who will say, well, I've got a biweekly one-on-one with my direct report supervisor. About every other one gets canceled because he's got
Mhm.
meetings, because he's got this, because he's got that. And
Yeah.
when I talk to leaders, they will say, yeah, I would love to meet one-on-one with all of my people, with each of my people. It's just not possible. I just don't have the time to do it unless there's a specific task, unless there's a specific project that we need to talk about.
But
So
isn't that's messed up in my
yeah,
opinion?
isn't it? It is.
If you're a
You
leader and
you
you don't have time to meet with your people, um, how are you a leader?
yeah. How?
A
Yes.
and I believe it was NVIDIA's CEO, which I don't recall his name, but I saw a clip of him saying he doesn't meet one-on-one with his people because they know what to do. We communicate, and it's not necessarily about that. If I were to add
Right.
one thing to that what leaders should do when they're walking around is, what is unclear for you right now. If you can bring clarity to their work, that in and of itself is going to help them accomplish more, because that's kind of one of the number one things is lack of clarity on what their work is supposed to be accomplishing or how they're supposed to do it. So even that question about clarity would be extremely helpful.
I read an article about a leader who had a shared KPI board where his entire team of direct reports, they had their key performance indicators on a shared online board, and he just expected all of his people to update that board weekly so that he, at the beginning and at the end of the week, could just go online and review the board. And then he said, I only reach out to people if there's something amiss, if there's an anomaly or something's not where it needs to be.
Mm,
And I sat back and I thought, man, that is definitely, as you call it, that's a human doing view of the world. If
yeah,
somebody's not doing right, okay, then I'll reach out. I'll have those corrective conversations.
yeah,
But I have no desire to have a human connection with any of them. Can you imagine if we treated our families this way? If we said to our children, "Look, we're ending family dinners. Just
yeah,
just hey, post on this board in like the hallway somewhere. Give us an update on how you're doing in school, how
yeah.
you're doing in life,
Your
or whatever."
grades, yeah.
Yeah, maybe put in an order for dinner. We'll have it delivered, by whatever. Then we don't have we can get rid of all that human connection kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
And we wonder why there's such a high rate of depression, high rate of anxiety. Uh, it's the disconnection.
yeah,
It's the disconnection. Because the things that bring us joy, the things that make us grateful are those interactions between humans, right? What, for your boss who has regular one-on-ones with you, it's that knowing about you as a human being and even what she can do for you as your leader, that is probably her biggest reward as a leader, right? Um,
absolutely.
yeah.
And I'm not easy to manage. I will say I can be a handful at times, and
Sure.
so I give her props for that. Um, and it becomes that social lubricant that gets us past some of the tougher situations or,
Sure.
or tougher scenarios. And I
Yeah.
would say my last thought is for leaders who are in remote work environments. Karen Ziegler and Dan Rust are living proof that you can create human connection with
Yeah.
people you're not interacting with in real life. Now,
Yeah.
is in real life better when you have that opportunity? Sure, of course, it's great
Sure.
to meet and connect with people, but
Yeah.
it's not the limiter. It doesn't have to be the limiter. What
Yeah.
you have to be very intentional, though. You have to say to yourself, "I am going to intentionally make that connection with that person, and I'm going to build that relationship with them over time. I'm going to share and I'm going to ask. The sharing is going to go in both directions. I am going to have a positive human connection with this person over time, and I'm going to do what it takes from me to make that happen." But
Yeah.
most leaders are not that intentional. Instead, they will say, we need to build our corporate culture. Let's bring everyone back into the office at least 2 days a week, maybe 3 days a
Yeah.
week, because what they call culture is when they
Mhm.
walk in to the floor of cubicles, and they hear the buzz, they hear the clickety clack, They see the activity and they say, yeah,
Mhm.
that's a productive culture because I can see it,
Yeah.
I can hear it. All these unconscious cues are telling me, ooh, the bees are buzzing, everyone's working.
The worker
Okay,
bees.
yeah, exactly. But that's not culture. The culture
No.
is actually what's happening within those humans. Um,
Yeah.
and I'm going to go back to the human score assessment to kind of paraphrase what you said. What it brings what's happening internally out into the external world so that we can see it and then we
Yeah.
can do something about it.
Yeah.
Um,
It makes the invisible visible. And it's in doing that something about it. Back to the connection. And I think one thing that our our own leadership age range did a disservice, and it still continues on now, and that's why most leaders today, I think the stats are pretty abysmal on emotional intelligence with leaders. And I do think there's hope in that, because now that we don't have to do all the thinking with artificial intelligence, we can actually begin to think about emotions. But I look at emotions differently. Emotions are energy in motion, and it is not our job to understand the emotion of our employees, but in, your boss coming to you and asking you how things are going, giving that safe environment to express your emotions, then those negative emotions can be that energy emotion to be moving on out, and what she can bring that conversation back to
yeah,
empowering emotions, emotions that can, lift you up, to refocus you. It's just that conversation with her releases the negative ones so that you
yeah.
can get back to what you want to do in your life and in your job.
And I feel much safer. Like if something is behind schedule, which because of the way my brain works, it happens more than it's more than infrequent that I'm late on a deliverable. It's like my perfectionist mindset won't let go of something until it's exactly what it needs to be. But it lubricates that. I feel much more comfortable being upfront about that. But now you mentioned emotional intelligence.
Mm.
The cynic in me says
Yeah.
emotional intelligence was a term coined in 1990, 35 years ago. So for
Mhm.
35 years, we've been talking emotional intelligence. Daniel Goleman writes a book. It's a bestseller. It's all, every leader knows emotional intelligence is one of the key leadership capabilities. And yet you just said it. It's one of the biggest gaps you see in the workplace today. And I completely
Yeah.
agree with you.
Yeah.
Completely agree. So what say you, Karen Ziegler, to give us some hope
Mm.
regarding emotional intelligence?
Well, from your own self, for selfish reasons, right?
Yeah,
For my own sanity, my own peace of mind, my own um harmony in my own life, for my own work life balance. Because to me, work life balance isn't having the right number of hours in every
right.
category in my life. It's not. It's being present and engaged in whatever area I am. So back when I was a working mother, work life balance wasn't necessarily about 8 hours on the job, the other, whatever the math is, with my family. It's, where is my mind?
Yeah,
If when I'm 8 hours on the job, is my mind what's happening to my daughter who's not feeling well? Or when I'm at work, is my mind, or when I'm at home with my daughter, am I engaging with her, playing with her, or am I thinking about the metric that I need to meet? So that, to me, balance is more internal than external, and emotional intelligence is a lot of that. So for selfish reasons, why would the leaders want to become more emotionally intelligent? Because those emotions that you have not addressed are projecting out onto other
yeah,
people. And so I see this with leaders all the time. Um, they don't feel sufficient in their own selves, like they're doing things right or well, or being successful. So they project those negative emotions out onto their staff, even the ones that are performing exceptionally well. So the blessing of understanding our own emotions, because rarely is the emotion what's happening in the present, what's triggered us.
Mhm.
It's usually something that happened long, long ago, childhood, early development, some trauma. When we begin to, and it's not even actually the trauma itself, it's the belief that we came away from that trauma with, that we were unworthy, unlovable, incapable. And so when you become emotionally intelligent about your emotions, you begin to, okay, self-examine, self-reflect. All right, I'm having this emotion because of this thing my boss, my employee, my whoever said, but why is that triggering me? There's some belief in there that I'm accepting that's
Yeah.
underneath the actual happening. And so to me, emotional intelligence is more than just understanding the emotion, is it understanding the beliefs below the emotions, and how false beliefs that I'm not lovable, I'm not worthy, I'm not capable, those false beliefs take away my power. And that's when I overwork, or I, obsess about something, whatever. So emotional intelligence is about your own internal power and where you're giving it away. So that would be my takeaway on emotional intelligence.
And the connection you just helped me make is that to be a human-centered leader of others, in order to achieve that greater understanding and connection with the humans in those seats, you
Mhm.
start with a greater understanding and connection with the human in your seat. And the
Yeah.
deeper you go with yourself first and understand
Mhm.
yourself. So those conversations that we've been talking about, like when I say, hey, ask your direct report, how am I doing for you? I'm not sure what the right verbalization is, but maybe you need to ask yourself the same question. How am I doing for me? How am I
Yeah.
managing this career for me? How am I
Yeah.
managing this leadership position for me? What's happening with me and why? And that deeper understanding of who I am and why, how I show up and why for my purposes. Yeah, I do think it then opens you up to have that deeper understanding of others. Um,
Oh, sure.
so, and I think this is a great place to end with encouraging leaders to make that inner journey themselves, that emotional intelligence journey themselves, and don't be afraid to take a hard look at yourself, because I think the truth is mostly everyone else sees it. Like
Yeah.
this mask that you think you're putting on,
Yeah. No,
it's
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 not.
for you, because the rest of
Yeah.
us, we see the cracks in the mask
Yeah.
if we're paying attention, and most employees are. So rather than that scare you,
Yeah.
actually spend some time thinking about you and how you're showing up for you in the workplace. Um, Karen, so this always happens when I meet someone like you who goes really deep in their
Mhm.
subject matter. As we
Mhm.
as we talk, like if you and I were having coffee at a Starbucks,
Mhm.
this would be about the halfway point. We would be
Yeah.
yeah, like
We
we
would
would
still be
just
going
be
for a while.
yeah, just be getting into the good stuff, and then you would share stories, and I would share stories. Um,
Yeah.
but it's not Starbucks; it is a
Mhm.
podcast, so we're going to
Yeah.
wrap it up. And
Mhm.
I want you to know how much I appreciate you sharing all of this with us, and hopefully you will get traction through this
Yeah.
podcast.
Thank
Those of
you.
you who are watching and think you might be interested in the human score or anything else that Karen has talked about, look to the show notes. You'll see, the hyperlinks to connect with Karen. If you have any comments or questions, you're welcome to leave those comments and questions on the podcast feed. Um, like us, subscribe to the Leadership Disrupted podcast. If you are one of those avowed leadership nerds who just enjoys talking and thinking about leadership, at least once a week, to
Yeah.
take your mind off in a direction that it might not have gone otherwise. But with that, Karen, I just want to end with thank you.
Yeah.
This has been fantastic.
Yes. Thank you so much, Dan. It's been a pleasure talking to you.